my golden child brother, got a BMW, Ivy League tuition, and dad's business while I built everything from scratch. Then he tried to sabotage my business. So I exposed years of fraud at his wedding and watched his entire life unravel. I'll never forget this smell of grilled ribs mixed with gasoline. That was the moment I realized my family didn't see me as one of them, just a fluke of footnote. I'm 33 now, and if you told me 10 years ago that I'd own 3 properties, drive a paid-off truck, and have a thriving landscaping company with 20 employees, I'd have laughed in your face. Not because I didn't dream big. I did, but because growing up I was told I was the disappointment. Repeatedly, loudly, and sometimes with the kind of silence that's even worse than words. My younger brother Brandon was the family's golden boy, not in a subtle way either. If there was a photo on the fridge, it was of Brandon holding a trophy. If someone's birthday got celebrated with streamers and cake from the fancy bakery, it was Brandon's. If a grown man got a brand new BMW wrapped in a red bow at 17 because he earned it by getting a B+ average. Yep, you guessed it, Brandon. Meanwhile, I was the kid who got a firm handshake for graduating high school, followed by, "So what now?" from my dad. Like I just used up my last free meal ticket. I wasn't dumb, I just didn't fit the mold they wanted. I didn't want to be a lawyer or an investment banker or shadow dad at the office all summer. I liked building things with my hands, fixing lawnmowers, cutting grass, painting stuff they saw as labor, which in my house basically translated to beneath you. Except in my case, apparently it wasn't. I moved out when I was 19, took a job with this old guy named Reggie who ran a landscaping business in town. He was gruff and smoked too much, but he taught me everything. How to bid jobs, how to spot soil problems, how to talk to picky clients without losing your temper. I saved every sin I could, ate spaghetti 6 nights a week, worked weekends, nobody noticed, nobody asked. The only time I heard from my family was when Brandon needed help moving something, or Dad needed someone to fix the sprinkler line because, hey, you're good with tools, right? Anyway, fast forward a bit. I'm not trying to dump my life story on you in one post, but let me lay this out. I bought my first fixer-upper house at 24. Did the work myself, flipped it, rolled the profit into a duplex, rented one side, lived in the other. I didn't post it on Facebook, didn't bring it up at Thanksgiving. I kept my head down, stayed quiet. That's what you do when your wins make other people squint. My family didn't see me as successful, just blue collar. Not in a proud way. More like, well, at least he's not in jail. Meanwhile, Brandon was sailing through Yale, then Stanford grad school, then working at some startup that hemorrhaged millions, but still called it self-disruptive. When he got Dad's business card at 21 and was told he'd take over the firm one day, I just nodded and smiled. I was used to it by then, but things changed slowly at first. Then, well, we'll get there. It started with this family barbecue my parents throw every June. They go all out, hire a caterer, set up tents, invite every person they've ever met since the Reagan administration. I'd skipped it the past 2 years, made excuses about clients and site inspections. Mostly because I didn't want to stand in the backyard making small talk while everyone asked Brandon about his latest venture and then looked at me like I was the guy checking the propane tank. But this year, Grandpa Frank guilt me into going. He's my mom's dad. Old school, rough around the edges, the only person in my family who ever said he was proud of me. He still calls me Hank the Tank. Even though I'm 5 feet 10 inches in and built more like a fence post than a linebacker, he said, "If you don't show up this year, I'll make you come over and listen to my golf stories for 6 hours straight." That man once made me listen to a 15-minute description of a sand trap. So I showed up. I pulled into the driveway around noon, parked down the street so I wouldn't block anyone, and walked in with a 6-pack of local craft beer I thought Dad might like. Nobody noticed. Brandon's BMW was parked on the lawn like a showpiece, and the music was already blaring from those portable speakers Dad loves to flex with. I found Grandpa by the grill, of course, standing next to my Uncle Jerry, who was already 2 beers in, and talking about inflation like he invented the term. Grandpa pulled me into a hug, then squinted at my arms. "You've been lifting bricks or just showing off?" he joked. I smiled and shrugged. Bit of both. We chatted for a bit. He asked how work was going, and I mentioned I was close to landing a commercial landscaping contract with a hotel downtown. His eyebrows went up. "That's no small job," he said. "Proud of you, Tank." That was the last nice thing anyone said to me that day. As the afternoon went on, I floated around nodding at cousins, avoiding conversations. I didn't bring up work or houses or anything. I didn't want to. I know how this family works. If you're not bragging about a new stock portfolio or a trust fund, they tune you out. And honestly, that was fine. I wasn't there to impress anyone. But then I heard it just a snippet over by the cooler where a couple of my younger cousins were chatting. One of them, maybe 16, said, "Hey, I saw your company trucks by the old gas station lot on Maple. You guys doing that new park or something?" It was harmless. He wasn't mocking me, just curious. I smiled and nodded. Nah, that's not the city project. We're clearing that lot for a small plaza coffee shop bakery, few office spaces. It's private. His eyes went wide. Wait, you own that? I froze a second. I didn't mean to say it like that. I usually deflected, but something about how casually he asked, how unjudging he seemed, it made me answer honestly. Yeah. I said closed last month, third property actually. And that's when it happened. The moment the air shifted. Brandon had been walking behind me. I hadn't seen him, but suddenly he was there standing way too close holding a glass of white wine and wearing that smug face he always had when he was about to say something backhanded. You own 3 properties, he said loud enough for people to turn their heads. Since when I turned slowly. Couple years now, I said, keeping my voice low. He barked a laugh. You, Hank the lawn guy. Someone near the grill chuckled. Someone else went silent. Grandpa's head turned just slightly. I opened my mouth to respond, but Brandon kept going. Wow. Guess it's true what they say. Even a broken clock's right twice a day. I smiled tightly. You're not wrong. I just decided to build my own clock. He didn't like that. His eyes narrowed. So what? You're some big real estate mogul now. 3 properties and a couple of weed whackers make you Donald Trump. I never said that, I replied. But it's working for me. Mom appeared at that moment like she'd smelled the tension brewing. Brandon, sweetie, can you grab me some of that rose from the cooler inside? She asked, placing a hand on his arm. But he didn't move. He just stared at me. You always act so smug, he said suddenly. Like you're better than us because you got out early. You think your little houses and pickup truck mean you've made it. I don't think I'm better than anyone, I said, my voice calm. I just stopped waiting for a pat on the head. He stepped forward. You think Dad's proud of you? I didn't answer. That's when he lost it. He threw his drink not at me but into the grass hard enough that the glass shattered against a lawn chair. Mom gasped and stepped back. A few people turned toward the noise. Some of the older relatives froze. One of the little kids started crying, and then because this is my family and nothing can just happen without a performance, Mom started crying too. I can't believe this is happening at my barbecue, she sobbed. Why can't you boys just support each other? Brandon wasn't looking at her. He was still locked on me. I didn't move, didn't flinch. Then came the part one didn't expect. Grandpa stepped forward slowly. He leaned on his cane, looked at Brandon, then at me, then back at Brandon, and then he laughed. Not a loud laugh, just one of those dry, wheezing chuckles that cuts through the tension like a knife. And he said something that made Mom stop crying. Brandon go pale and the entire table go quiet. Something I'm going to let you sit with until you tell me you're ready for more. Grandpa shifted his cane and looked right at Brandon with the kind of heavy silence that only old men can pull off. Like he was giving the air a second to settle so no one missed what he was about to say. Then in a slow, growly voice, he said, Boy, if Hank's the disappointment, then what does that make you? You could have heard a mosquito land on the potato salad. Brandon blinked like he didn't quite register it. Mom's mouth opened slightly. I swear even the wind stopped. Grandpa didn't elaborate. He just gave me a little nod like he'd been holding that line in his back pocket for years. And now that he played it, he was done talking. He turned around and walked back toward the grill, muttering something to Uncle Jerry about the ribs being overcooked. The silence didn't last long. Brandon stormed off toward the house, muttering under his breath. Mom scurried after him, still clutching that half-empty wine glass, looking over her shoulder at me like I'd somehow orchestrated all of it. And just like that, the party resumed. People laughed a little too loudly. Someone cranked up the music. Dad didn't say a word, just stood near the beer cooler, shaking his head like this whole thing was beneath his attention. That was always his move, emotional detachment. Let Mom be the heart. Let Brandon be the crown jewel, and he'd stay above it all. I stayed about another hour, talked to Grandpa again. He didn't mention the scene. We talked about tomato plants. Just before I left, he handed me a napkin. On it was scribbled a name and number, a friend of his who managed a lot of commercial rentals. Tell him I sent you, he said. He'll treat you fair. I thanked him and left quietly. That night, Brandon posted some cryptic nonsense on Instagram. Something like, funny how snakes can wear flannel. The caption was vague, but the timing was obvious. I ignored it. I had a meeting with a contractor the next morning and didn't have the energy to dissect his little tantrums. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that the drama died down and everyone moved on, but Brandon doesn't move on. He circles, he stews, he needs to win, even if it's a race nobody else is running. A few weeks later, I got an unexpected call. Is this Mr. Hank Dawson? The woman asked, polite and brisk. Speaking, this is Sandra from Glenda Bank. I just wanted to confirm that your application for the small business line of credit has been finalized. But we do have a couple questions about your employment verification. I froze. I didn't apply for any line of credit, I said. There was a pause. Oh, are you not affiliated with Dawson Landscaping LLC? My heart kicked up a notch. That's my company, I said slowly, but I haven't applied for anything recently. Can you tell me who submitted it? She couldn't, of course. Privacy laws and all. But she said the application had my name, address, and EIN, everything accurate. I told her it had to be a mistake, maybe fraud. She said she'd flag it and escalate the case. The call ended, but the questions didn't. My EIN wasn't public. Neither was my home address. I always used my business P.O. box for everything related to the company. My employees didn't even know where I lived. I felt a cold, sinking sensation in my gut. I called my accountant. We checked the online IRS portal together. No other weird filings, nothing amiss. Just that one bogus loan application. Then I remembered something. That barbecue. I'd left my work phone on the patio table for maybe 10 minutes while I went to grab a plate. It had a simple passcode, nothing major. But the Notes app, that's where I kept reminders. My EIN. Some client addresses things I needed on the go. I'd meant to password protect it, but never got around to it. Dumb, I know. And Brandon. Brandon knew my passcode. It used to be the street number of our childhood house. He'd teased me about it once years ago. I never thought he remembered. I couldn't prove it. Not then, but I knew. Still, I didn't confront him. I figured the failed loan stunt would be a one-off. Maybe some petty way to rattle me. The kind of low-blow move you pull when you've run out of comebacks. But it wasn't the end. That fall, I applied for a contract with the local university landscaping for 2 dorm buildings and the surrounding quad. It was bigger than anything I'd taken on before. I'd spent weeks prepping the proposal, estimating costs, pulling together references. The bidding process was competitive, but I felt good about it. A week before they were set to announce the winning bid, I got another call. "Hey, Hank, just wanted to follow up on something weird we saw," said Greg, the project coordinator for the university. "One of the admin team found a few complaints about your company. Thought I'd give you a heads up before we jump to conclusions." "Complaints?" I asked. "Yeah, reviews, emails, even a Better Business Bureau entry. Said your crew's damaged property didn't show up on time, stuff like that." I went cold. "That's not true." "I didn't think so," Greg said, "but we gotta check it out." I hung up and started digging. The reviews were all recent. A few Google entries, all anonymous. One review mentioned a specific property I'd never even worked on. The BBB complaint barely written in complete sentences, but it had my business name, my EIN, and a fake customer story that sounded just plausible enough to sting. I spent the next 3 days submitting takedowns, verifying with clients, and sending out character references. I lost the contract anyway. They went with a bigger firm. That one hit hard. I didn't tell anyone, not even Grandpa. I just poured myself into work, kept my head down, and added another layer to the invisible wall between me and the rest of my family. But the seed was planted now. Brandon wasn't just insecure. He was willing to sabotage me. And I wasn't going to play defense forever. Around Christmas, the family had another get-together, smaller this time. Just immediate family and a few close friends. Mom insisted I come. "It would mean so much to your brother," she said on the phone. "Let's just all be together. No drama." I agreed, but I told her up front. I wasn't staying long. I arrived with a tin of cookies and a polite smile. Brandon opened the door and said nothing, just looked me up and down like I was a package delivered to the wrong house. Inside, Dad was nursing scotch by the fireplace. Mom was fussing over appetizers. The room felt tight, like all the air had been prepared for an argument that hadn't started yet. Dinner was strained but civil. Brandon bragged about some consulting gig. Mom kept asking about my dating life. I gave short answers. I didn't mention work. I didn't mention my properties. I didn't say a word about the new truck I'd parked down the block. But then Brandon's fiancée, Sierra, spoke up. She was new to the family, polite, and a little too honest. "I heard you on a few buildings, Hank. That's awesome. Brandon told me you were really successful with your landscaping stuff. I think it's so cool when people build things from the ground up." I looked at Brandon. He was glaring at her like she'd read from a forbidden scroll. "I just mean," she added quickly, "it's nice that both of you are doing well." Silence. Mom changed the subject. Dad cleared his throat. Brandon excused himself from the table a few minutes later. After dessert, I grabbed my coat and said I had to go. As I was stepping out, Brandon followed me onto the porch. The door clicked shut behind us. "You think you're so clever," he said quietly. I turned slowly. "I think I'm tired. You're trying to embarrass me. You think people are impressed that Sierra is going to look at you and suddenly forget what a joke you've always been? I didn't respond. You think just because you scrape together some rental houses and mow rich people's lawns that you're finally equal? No, I said. I don't think we're equal. He smirked. Exactly. I stepped closer. I think I surpassed you years ago. You were just too busy looking in the mirror to notice. He went red jaw tight, but I was already walking down the steps heading to my truck. That was the night I knew it wasn't over. That was the night I realized Brandon wasn't just mad that I'd built something. He was furious that I'd built it without him. And that's when he did something I never expected. Something that made Mom cry, that made Dad finally choose sides, that made Grandpa pick up the phone and say 5 words I'll never forget. I didn't hear from Brandon for a few weeks after that night, and to be honest, I was relieved. I'd been living with a constant low-grade tension every time my phone rang or I opened an email from a potential client. Every little delay felt like it could be a setup, another torpedo aimed at my business. The air finally felt clear, or at least quiet. I threw myself into work. Winter was slow, but I used the time to plan. My third property, the commercial plaza, was nearly ready for Phase 2 tenant interior build-outs. A local bakery had signed on along with a chiropractor and a small design agency. I was excited even if I kept that excitement to myself. Success is quiet when you're used to being underestimated. Then February hit. I was pulling into the lot of the new property, still gravel and fencing, but starting to take shape when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I wouldn't pick up, but I had a few contractors out for bids, so I answered. Mr. Dawson speaking. This is Officer Keller with the City Business Compliance Division. We have a situation with one of your job sites, 1225 Maple Avenue. Are you available to come down to City Hall this afternoon? My stomach twisted. Sure. Can you tell me what this is about? There's been an anonymous report filed. Possible code violations, unsafe storage of equipment, potential zoning irregularities. We just need to verify a few things. I sat in my truck for a full minute after hanging up, trying to breathe through it. Not because I thought they'd find anything. I ran a tight ship, but because I knew exactly who was behind it. Brandon. I didn't have evidence, not yet, but it was his signature all over it. Vague accusations filed anonymously. Just enough to cause friction. Just enough to slow me down. This wasn't about proving I was a fraud. It was about exhausting me until I broke. That afternoon, I sat across from a tight-lipped woman in a sterile government office while she read through a clipboard of concerns. I handed her my permits, my zoning approval, and a packet of safety reports. I smiled. I kept my voice level. She softened by the end. Even said, "This looks like a solid project, Mr. Dawson. We'll probably close the complaint without much follow-up, but the damage was done." My contractor called the next day and pulled out of the bakery build. Said his insurance didn't want to touch the job until the city confirmed the complaint was false, which would take a few weeks, maybe more. That set off a domino effect. The bakery asked for a delay clause in their lease. The chiropractor's lawyer wanted to revisit the contract, and the designer, well, she just ghosted me completely. I felt it slipping, all of it. I didn't sleep much that week. I kept replaying every decision I'd made since I started wondering if I should have gone slower, if I should have just stuck to lawn care, if maybe my family had been right, that I'd overreached, that I wasn't meant to win. I was walking through a Home Depot one evening, picking up replacement parts for one of our trucks when my knees actually buckled for a second. I caught myself on a shelf of PVC elbows. Tried to play it off, but I stood there for a long time just breathing. It wasn't the money. I could survive a setback. It was the why of it. The fact that it came from inside the house, that my own brother, who had every advantage, couldn't stomach the idea of me building something real. That's when the shame crept in. Not for what I'd done, but for what I hadn't done. For how I'd let them keep treating me like the underdog, like the side character in their golden boy narrative. Every time I stayed quiet, every time I played nice, I thought I was being the bigger person. But really, I just made myself small enough to be stepped on. I nearly called Grandpa that night. I got as far as dialing before hanging up. I didn't want to unload it all on him again. He was in his 80s. He didn't need my baggage, but he must have sensed it anyway, because the next morning he showed up, pulled right into the gravel lot on Maple in his rusted Ford parked next to my work truck, and got out like he owned the city. He had 2 coffees in his hand and that same crooked smile. "I figured you might be too proud to call," he said. I took the coffee. We stood there in the wind, watching an idol near the edge of the property. He didn't ask what happened. He just waited. So I told him all of it. The loan application, the fake reviews, the BBB complaint, the anonymous city report. The lost tenants, the ghosted calls, everything Brandon had done and everything I hadn't done to stop it. Grandpa didn't interrupt. He just sipped his coffee and squinted like he was watching a deer walk into traffic. When I finished, he nodded. "You know what your grandmother used to say?" he asked. I shook my head. "There's a special kind of fool that mistakes silence for weakness." He chuckled. "You're not a fool, Hank. You're just patient. But even patience has a price if you don't know when to cash it in." I didn't say anything. "You want my advice?" he added. "Stop playing chess with a pigeon." I blinked. "A pigeon?" He grinned. "No matter how good you are, the damn bird's just going to knock over all the pieces and crap on the board." I laughed. I couldn't help it. And that laugh did more than the coffee. I spent the next 2 days cleaning up the site, tightening every bolt, organizing every record. I resubmitted my permits with highlighted copies. I wrote a personal letter to the bakery owner and offered 1 month's rent-free. I called the chiropractor and scheduled a video walkthrough to show progress. I couldn't fix everything overnight, but I could show that I wasn't rattled, that I wasn't going anywhere. And then, because I needed to stop being reactive, I made a plan. I started documenting everything. I ordered a camera system for the job sites, not just for security, but for proof. I hired a digital consultant to scrub the fake reviews, then traced the IPs if possible. I upgraded my accounting software and added new layers of authentication to every app one used. I changed my phone passcode twice. I wasn't going to just defend myself anymore. I was going to build armor. A week later, I got an email. The city had officially dismissed the complaint. 2 days after that, the bakery owner signed the lease. The chiropractor followed. The designer never came back, but I didn't need her. And just like that, the momentum returned. I was at the plaza one morning loading bags of mulch into a wheelbarrow when I noticed something odd. A black Lexus idling across the street, tinted windows, engine humming. It didn't move for 10 minutes. Then it pulled away slowly. I knew that car, Brandon. I never waved, just kept working. But something shifted in me that day. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was ready. Ready to stop waiting for the next sabotage. Ready to stop playing defense. Ready to stop letting people who never built anything tell me what I was worth. I wasn't just going to recover, I was going to win. Not out of spite, but because every nail, every contract, every seed I planted had been earned. Not handed to me, not funded by Dad, not rescued by some legacy favor, and I was done apologizing for it. I didn't know what Brandon would do next, but I had a feeling. And when it came, it would be the last straw. The moment that would turn this quiet war into something bigger, something public, something that would expose everything. And it all started with an invitation, a wedding invitation. And the note Brandon wrote inside it. The invitation came in a thick, cream-colored envelope sealed with wax, like we were in some kind of royal court. My name was printed on the front in gold cursive, Mr. Hank Dawson, as if that alone might convince me it wasn't bait. The return address was Brandon's condo downtown, the one Dad had co-signed for, the one he bragged about having floor-to-ceiling city views, even though it faced a parking garage. I sat with the envelope unopened for a day and a half. Not out of dread exactly, but out of curiosity. I wanted to give myself time to guess. Would it be a standard invite, some phony olive branch pretending the pasture hadn't happened? Or would Brandon do what he always did? Bury a jab in the fine print. I broke the seal on a cold Wednesday morning while sipping black coffee in my kitchen. Inside was a folded invitation wrapped in navy ribbon, the kind you might find at a 5-star wedding in Tuscany. The script was elegant. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Brandon Dawson and Sierra Langston. Saturday, September 10th. The Langston Estate, Riverbend Hills. Fancy. Sierra came from money, old money. Her family owned wineries and property along the state border. They were the kind of people who had stylists and summer homes, not vacation rentals. But the real poison was handwritten at the bottom in Brandon's unmistakable cursive. Hoping this event can help us all move forward. Dress code is formal. Please leave work boots at home this time. Wouldn't want you tracking mud into the rose garden. B. I sat there staring at it for a full minute. Not angry, not shocked, just done. This was never going to end. Not until I ended it. See, up until this point, I played fair. I hadn't gone out of my way to humiliate Brandon. I hadn't told anyone in the family about the fake complaints, the reviews, the sabotage. I hadn't retaliated. I just worked harder. But that wasn't enough. And now he was about to marry into a family that believed he was the clean-cut prodigy, the young business executive with charm and legacy, while I, according to him, was the dropout with dirt under my nails and grass stains on my soul. So I made a decision. I was going to show everyone who Brandon really was, not just through rumors or accusations, but through cold, clean facts, and I was going to do it at his own wedding. It wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be messy. It would be precise, controlled, and devastating. But first, I needed help. The first person I called was Alex. Alex used to work for Brandon's old startup before it went belly up 2 years ago. He was their back-end developer. Smart guy, mild-mannered, but he and Brandon had a falling out near the end. Something about unpaid equity and ghosted emails. We'd connected once at a mutual friend's barbecue, and I remembered how casually Alex had said, Brandon never paid his debts, just buried them under new logos. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, Alex, it's Hank Dawson. We met at Noah's place last year. Oh, hey. Yeah, landscaping Hank. What's up? You still have that thumb drive, I asked. He paused. You mean the one with the email dumps? Yep. Another pause. You planning on suing him or something? No, I said. Just want to show a few people who they're marrying? Alex chuckled. You know I've been waiting for someone to ask me that for 2 years. He sent it over that afternoon. Compressed file, password protected, full of exported PST files. PDF as screenshots, internal emails from Brandon bragging about inflating user data, withholding pay to contractors, even mocking Sierra's dad for thinking I'm anything but a well-dressed parasite. Gold. But I didn't want it to come from me directly. That would look vindictive. I needed a buffer. So I called Emily. Emily was my ex. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. Not since we agreed to go separate ways because of our mismatched schedules. But Emily worked PR, real PR, reputation management crisis, cleanup, corporate scandal spinning. She knew how to ruin someone professionally without leaving fingerprints. She answered with a cautious, Hank, hey, sorry for the out-of-nowhere call. You okay? Yeah, I said, but I need a favor and I'll owe you for it. Her tone shifted. Talk. I told her everything. Not the childhood stuff, not the jealousy, just the facts, the email dump, the wedding, the lies, the people Brandon had conned, and the families about to be joined under false pretenses. Emily was quiet for a while. Then she said, okay, here's what we do. We spent the next 3 hours planning. She helped me select the juiciest, most indisputable documents, emails with timestamps, a PDF of bounce checks, screenshots of Slack messages where Brandon joked about renting friends in suits for a meeting with Sierra's parents, a photo of an Excel sheet where he padded investment numbers before pitching a fake app idea. We built a tight professional dossier, concise and horrifying. Then we created a dummy Gmail account under the name Event Guest 101, and we timed the email. Emily had a contact in the Langston family's wedding planning team, a friend of a friend. She confirmed the rehearsal dinner would be Friday at 6 p.m. Dozens of key guests, family, close friends, Sierra's father, her mother, her aunt, who happened to be a state judge. We scheduled the email to go out at 5:50 p.m. with one subject line: before you toast the groom. But that was just phase 1, because I wasn't just looking to unravel Brandon's wedding. I wanted to prepare for the fallout. So I started gathering everything Brandon had done to me personally. I filed an incident report with the city regarding the fake business complaint. I provided IP addresses for the reviews. Emily knew someone at Google who confirmed they'd come from an apartment building Brandon's. I logged all the dates, all the connections. I wasn't going to press charges. Not yet, but I wanted the ammo. Then I did something I should have done months ago. I sat down with my parents. They invited me over for lunch one weekend. Mom said she wanted to go over family plans for the wedding. I said I'd come if we could have a real conversation. No filters. They agreed. We sat on the back patio. Mom poured iced tea. Dad grilled chicken. It was quiet for the first 10 minutes. Then I said, I know what Brandon's been doing. Dad froze. What do you mean? I looked straight at him. The fake complaints, the sabotage, the city report, the BBB lies, the review bombing. I have proof, and I'm done pretending it didn't happen. Mom set down her glass with a soft clink. Hank, why would he do that? Because I built something without him. Because I stopped playing the failure. Because it made him feel small. Dad didn't speak, just stared into the grill. I reached into my backpack and handed Mom a folder, cleanly printed, tabbed, organized everything Brandon had done. The anonymous emails traced the screenshots, the digital fingerprints. She skimmed it for a while. Then she whispered, oh my God. I waited. Dad finally said, he's your brother. No, I said calmly. He's a bully in a tuxedo. Neither of them defended him. I left the folder with them. I didn't say I was going to blow up the wedding. I didn't need to. They both knew something was coming. But even I didn't know what would really happen next because the email went out, and less than 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Grandpa. And all he said was, "Boy, you better get down here." The dam just broke. I sped the whole way there. Grandpa hadn't sounded panicked. He didn't do panic, but there was something in his voice. Urgency, like a man who's seen 1,000 fires and just found a fresh one crackling in his living room. When I pulled up to the Langston estate, the parking attendants didn't even stop me. They were too distracted by the yelling coming from inside. The rehearsal dinner had already gone off the rails. I slipped in through a side entrance and found myself in a hallway lined with family portraits and towering floral arrangements that looked like they cost more than my first car. Through the archway ahead, I could see the main dining hall. Long tables with half-eaten plated scattered wine glasses, a piano player frozen mid-note. Guests were standing, some were whispering, some outright arguing, but the center of it all, like always, was Brandon. He was red-faced, flanked by Sierra and her father. The wedding planner hovered nearby, pale and shaking, clutching a phone in both hands. And in Brandon's hand was a stack of paper-printed emails. Even from 20 feet away, I could see the header on one Slack transcript, Q3 growth deck review, so they'd open the email. I moved in slowly, sticking to the wall. I didn't want to get caught in the blast radius. Not yet. Sierra was saying something, sharp voice quivering. "So you did mock my dad, you did inflate your numbers, you lied about your equity, your startup, everything." Brandon snapped back. "They're taken out of context. It's sabotage. Someone's trying to ruin me." "Hank, it's Hank." "I know it is." He turned so fast his wine sloshed onto the carpet. "Where is he? Where the hell is he?" "Right here," I said, stepping into view. Heads turned. Guests pulled back like I was a live grenade. Brandon's eyes locked onto mine, furious and wild. "You think this is clever?" He spat, "crashing my wedding weekend with some juvenile revenge plot." I walked forward, hands in my pockets, calm. "I didn't crash anything. I said I was invited." "Remember cream envelope, gold lettering, something about mud on boots?" Sierra's father spoke next, low but with steel in his voice. "Is it true?" he asked Brandon. "Did you manipulate our investment call? Did you falsify returns?" Brandon hesitated. Too long. That was his tell. Sierra stepped away from him, clutching the folder like it physically hurt her to hold it. "Do you know what I told my mother?" she said, her voice trembling. "That you were the most honest man I'd ever met. That even if you came from a family with drama, you were clean. I defended you over and over. And this is who you really are. I didn't mean for any of it to get. You didn't mean to get caught." She snapped. "That's not the same." One of the Langston uncles, a stout man with a silver beard and an expensive jacket, stood and walked to her side quietly, with finality. "That told me everything. She wasn't going to let this slide. Not even for appearances. Not even for her wedding." Brandon lunged at me then. Not a punch. He wasn't that kind of man, but he shoved me hard. The kind of shove that screams desperation, not strength. I barely moved. I just looked at him and said, "You spent your life stepping on people who'd never fight back. You thought you'd always get away with it. But you forgot something, Brandon. Some of us build. We don't fake it. We don't charm our way through. We grind. And one day we stopped staying quiet. You ruined everything," he hissed. "No, I said you did." Security came then. I didn't resist. Didn't need to. One of Sierra's cousins stepped in and told them I was invited. They backed off. I walked out on my own and let the fire burn behind me. The fallout came fast. Within 24 hours, the Langstons officially canceled the wedding. The venue stayed booked. The Langston used it for a family reunion brunch instead, which made the society papers in a deliciously indirect way. Sierra issued a polite but unmistakable breakup announcement on Instagram. Some truths come in late, but they come. Brandon tried to spin it, of course. Claimed sabotage, claimed the documents were forged. But Emily had sent copies to the Langston legal team along with verification trails, IP logs, and a clean timeline. It wasn't just true, it was bulletproof. Sierra's father pulled their family's investment from Brandon's holding company that triggered a breach clause in Brandon's remaining funding, and suddenly he owed people money he didn't have. Dad didn't step in. Not this time. In fact, 2 weeks later, I got a call from my father. He didn't apologize, not directly. That wasn't his style. But he said I was wrong about you, Hank, for a long time. And that was enough. Mom called too. Cried, of course. Said she felt like she didn't know her own son anymore. I didn't say which son she meant. She sent me a letter a few days later with photos from my childhood, ones I'd never seen. Ones where I was front and center, not blurred in the background behind Brandon's trophies. I put them in a drawer. I wasn't ready yet, but someday. As for Grandpa, he showed up to my job site 2 weeks later with a folding chair and a bag of lemon drops. He didn't say anything for 10 minutes, just sat there watching the crew work. Then he looked at me and said, "Damn good revenge. Clean surgical. You get that from your grandmother?" I laughed. That spring, I signed 2 new commercial leases. The plaza hit full occupancy. I hired 5 more workers, bought a new truck. My accountant told me I'd cleared my first $1 million in revenue. No one handed it to me. No one opened a door for me. I kicked it down and built a better one. Brandon. Last I heard, he was consulting for a friend's app company in another state. Small time. Still chasing big talk with no engine behind it. He sent me a message once, just one line. "You think you won?" I didn't respond. Because I didn't need to think I won. I knew it. And not because he lost, but because I finally stopped living under someone else's shadow. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the blueprint. And the next time someone calls me the other Dawson brother, I'll just smile and let them pass.